In this video, we'll prepare a Week 2 cash lineup on DraftKings and a Week 2 cash lineup on FanDuel. We'll also go over a free entry NFL DFS contest with a weekly prize pool of $200. And it's all coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants.
Welcome to our first ever NFL DFS show where we do both DraftKings and FanDuel. These folks can all get along now, Michael, all in the same show. But I want to tell you the results of that Rob McClister and Eric Lee contest that we had the previous week. Let me give a shout out to DFS Hub founder Rob McClister. His lineup went off. He scored 143 points, led by Tyreek Hill and Calvin Ridley, but it wasn't enough for against Team Eric that scored 170.6, led by Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler, and a very cheap Tutu Atwell. So I want to share, Michael, with people the weekly contest that we're going to follow all season long on DFS Hub. Let's see the week 1 results. In third place, congratulations to Richard Brim. 170.6 points, Michael. That number sounds familiar. That looks like he just copy and pasted my lineup from the show. But hey, congratulations to you, Richard. That worked this time. No guarantee that'll always work. So congratulations on winning the $25 for third place. Michael, I took second place. That's me at the Fantasy Football Consultants. I made a couple of strategic changes late to the original lineup that I had. A couple of changes weren't very good, Isaiah Likely, but thankfully I was able to get another star in my lineup. Derrick Henry joined Austin Eckler, Justin Jefferson, and Tyreek Hill. But I didn't come close to winning, Michael.
Yeah, big congratulations to Tom. I think it's Latondre. Obviously, took advantage of some bargains in a couple of spots so he could get C-Mac, Tyreek, and Eckler in his lineup. Also, Justin Jefferson. I don't know how he got all those guys in there, but he squeezed them in. And what a week! What a nice win for him. Congrats, Tom.
Yes, if you're wondering how do you get in on this contest, it's DFS Hub runs it every week. If you also want to support this channel, sign up for DFS Hub at dfshub.com/FFC. It is free to enter because you have two options. When you join, you can use their free account and still participate in the NFL DFS contest. But two things that I like all of our community to do. Check out all the tools that they have on here. There's some great things for both NFL DFS and season-long leagues that will help save you time and build better lineups. And two, please at some point, as a thanks for them doing this weekly contest of $200 every week, give a try to their pro access. You can try it for just 1 week for $1. Just use the coupon $1. And if you don't like it, if it's not for you, you certainly can cancel after that week. Michael, let's talk about week 2, FanDuel and DraftKings. Who do we like?
All right, Eric, we're ready. There's two guys that you and I have been talking about that we really want to get into our lineup. With Eckler possibly out, we really want to get Christian McCaffrey. He showed in week 1 that the Niners are not going to limit his usage. He had the most carries of all running backs in the NFL this last week and had the most yards as well. And had ripped off that nice long run. He wasn't involved in the passing game as much as we would have liked to see, but that's because they were so far ahead in that game. That game got out of hand quickly. We know that CMC is going to be involved in the passing game as well. I think you got to find a way to get him in there because of not only his high floor, but his big upside.
No position returns value more at the top than running back. We're spending the money on Tony Pollard as well. I love the game environment. He is a home favorite, 9-point favorites now over the New York Jets. with a solid 25 implied total. I mean, we were all wondering, how is Pollard going to do when he becomes the man? Will they give him a full workload? The results are in after week 1. The answer is absolutely yes. Now, you may get fooled if you looked at the box score and said, wait a minute, I saw this guy got carries and that guy got carries. That was garbage time. They beat the Giants 40-0. But when it counted, it was Pollard not only getting involved in the passing game and getting the bulk of the carries, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He's going to be the goal line back as well.
That's right. And you might be, hey, the Jets defense looked good against the Bills. They looked really good in the defensive backfield. They're going to have to run the ball if they want to win this game. And I think that's what they'll do. They're going to use Pollard.
All right. So both of these 2 guys appear in our DraftKings and FanDuel lineup. So let's take a look at the rest of our lineup and talk about those guys, because Michael, we got to find some bargains. All right. We're going to start with FanDuel. And I want to talk about the wide receivers where we were able to get some bargains, but hopefully didn't suffer too much in quality. Let's start with Zay Flowers. The verdict is in on Flowers. He is the number 1 wide receiver on the Baltimore Ravens. He had 9 receptions and 10 targets and 78 yards. That's especially impressive because Lamar Jackson had a horrible game. He only threw for 169 yards. Now I do have to keep in mind that Mark Andrews was out last week and he may be back this week, but I still think Zay Flowers is going to be heavily featured. Don't forget that J.K. Dobbins is unfortunately out for the rest of the year. I think they're going to rely on the passing game. Another number 1 wide receiver is DJ Moore. He plays for Chicago. Man, it's not often you can get a number 1 wide receiver facing a terrible pass defense that just got completely shredded by the Minnesota Vikings. Look, you're getting this bargain because he had a terrible first week. But he had good chemistry with Fields in the preseason. So I think it's safe to go with DJ Moore here, given the price. And then finally, Tyler Lockett is $6,500. What I really like is the game environment here facing the Detroit Lions. This is the second highest over under on the main slate, only behind Kansas City and Jacksonville. You're getting this price because of how poorly the Seattle Seahawks played last year. But unlike the Rams, I think the Detroit Lions are going to put up points from the beginning, which is going to force Seattle to pass.
Yeah, and I think you meant last week. They actually, if you think about last year, look at this game last year. And we'll talk about Geno Smith in just a minute, who we've got there slated in the quarterback spot. But this was a high-scoring game last year, and that's why you're seeing a prediction of a high-scoring game this week. I think Detroit's defense has improved, so that's something to note. But Tyler Lockett, really inexpensive in a game that should have a lot of passing thrown. DJ Moore, completely agree. Really like the defense he's going up against. I think Chicago's going to have to throw the ball against that tough run defense. And man, I really like this Zay Flowers kid. I tell you, he is a special talent. They've been touting him all preseason. Obviously went for him early in the draft. I think these are truly good bargains with upside, and allowed us to have CMC and Pollard in our lineup. Eric, where do you want to go next?
All right, so let's talk about the other 4 remaining players. I'm not going to talk much about Geno Smith. He mirrors Tyler Lockett. The fact that he had a terrible first game, he's at a ridiculously low price. I mean, he's QB 15, and as Michael said, he scored 48 points last year that they faced Detroit in Detroit. So a dome game, I expect a lot of scoring. So the guy that I am excited to get in this lineup, I was really upset I couldn't get him in last week because he played on Thursday, is David Montgomery. If you saw my video in the offseason talking about my favorite sleeper pick, I really thought that David Montgomery would take the Jamal Williams role. And the results are in. He took the Jamal Williams role. He out-carried Gibbs 21-7, and he got all the goal line carries. Now, is that going to be the case for the rest of the year? Maybe, but I have a pretty good. We're not drafting him for season long. I have a pretty good feeling it'll be the case this week again. So love the game environment. He's at home. He's a favorite. He's facing a Seattle defense. It's not that was terrible in week 1. And I can tell you as a Seattle fan, their weakness, regardless of their results in week 1, is their their rush defense. So I think that the Lions will rely on Montgomery in this high-scoring game. All right, so who's left for me to talk about? Let's talk about your ex-Raider, Darren Waller. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the Giants were doing last Sunday night. I don't think it was playing football when they lost 40-0. But the one thing that you can glean from that game is Waller is going to be a very important part of this lineup. He played off a gimpy hamstring. I hope he'll even be more healthy next week. But he goes from facing a very difficult Dallas defense to the Arizona Cardinals. Michael, I think that's going to like a high school team going to play now a peewee opponent. So I like getting Waller in this lineup for a reasonable $6,600 price. And the last player is our defense. Look how far Michael is going to go down. $3,400 for Houston, a Houston team that's home, that is like basically a pick 'em. I think they're a 1-point dog. And they face an Indianapolis Colts team who does not have Jonathan Taylor, who has a banged up rookie quarterback starting for them.
Yeah, a big fan of D'Amico Ryans, although I'm not going to say anything else about your Houston pick. Where the money was, that's where we had to go. And really, like you say, not many other options around it that were that interesting. Really like the Darren Waller pick. If you watch that game, you could see he was really the only offensive player on the receiver core for the Giants that could get any breakaway from the defense there. And so he's clearly a special talent, and I think they're going to use them a lot. And Jones has used his tight ends historically a lot. David Montgomery, I agree with you that right now, early in the season, is the time to pick him. He's a very strong bargain, even though I think everybody knows Jahmyr Gibbs has the upside that Detroit's going to want to go with, but they're going to ease him in. They're going to use Montgomery at the goal line. This is going to be a high-scoring game. Montgomery even gets involved in the passing game. So I really feel like this is, again, we're starting with Pollard and Christian McCaffrey, but Waller, tons of upside there. I think Montgomery has goal line upside as well. And even some of our receiver core have upside. So I like the floor on all these guys, including the bargains. Really like this lineup, Eric.
All right, let's go over to DraftKings.
All right, Eric, now we're going to talk about our DraftKings line. I've already talked about Christian McCaffrey and Tony Pollard and have talked about Geno Smith as well. Really nothing else to add, although he's even a little bit cheaper on this platform as well. Because we have a little bit more money available to us in DraftKings, we are allowed to get another big upside guy, and we're going to go with Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs started the season against really one of the best defensive backfields in the NFL and still got 13 targets, 10 receptions. If you guys watched that game, which most of you did because it was a phenomenal game, you saw that Stefon Diggs was able to do what he wasn't able to do last year, which is get separation from Sauce Gardner. Really impressed with him. You can tell that he's going to be a kind of security blanket for Josh Allen. And this week he's gone up against my Raiders, who have not only historically been weak against the pass, they've been weak against the Buffalo Bills. So I see that happening again this week. A lot of upside, great floor with him. So, hey, the fact that we can afford him and some of these other guys is, Christian McCaffrey and Tony Pollard is huge. But we can't afford any other big players because of it. So where are we going to go? We're gonna go with a couple of bargain plays, and we're going to start with Zay Jones from Jacksonville, who really he ate up a lot of the targets this last week. that we thought we were going to see with Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. So he was the go-to. I think Christian Kirk had 1 target this last week. The 7 of them went to Zay Jones. So the fact that we can get him for $4,700 against the Kansas City defensive backfield, they're going to have to throw the ball in this game. So the game's in Jacksonville. It should be nice and sunny out there. I really like Zay Jones for this price tag. And then finally finishing out their wide receivers. We don't have any money left, so we have to go with someone who's a bargain basement price. And we're gonna go with Jaden Reed, who, he only got 5 targets, but he ended up getting 48 yards receiving. Had a nice little rapport there with Jordan Love. He's an athlete. You can tell he's an athlete. I think there's an injury with one of the receivers as well. And
Christian
Dubs,
Watson.
with Christian Watson, and then Dubs, who did get the touchdown pass in the game, was also questionable this last week, so he may not be 100% either. So, really what we're buying here is this price tag. I'm not going to say there's a ton of upside here with Jaden Reed, but the Atlanta defensive backfield is nothing impressive. So that's why we went with these 3 guys on the wideouts. What do you want to add before I move on to the next spot?
Yeah. One thing I'm disappointed in my FanDuel lineup was I couldn't get exposure to the Kansas City Jacksonville game. That's going to be by far the highest scoring game this week, by far over under wise. It's at 51. And I love getting Zay Jones, who I agree with you has passed Christian Kirk as the number 2 option on that team. Jaden Reed is just someone you have to watch the news on Christian Watson. So I'm less excited about him if Christian Watson is playing. He's the wide receiver 3, and he becomes a starter on all downs if Watson's out. Yeah.
Just a caveat on Geno Smith. Both Eric and I talked a little bit amongst ourselves about Anthony Richardson, who's in that ballpark. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's similar pricing. He's coming off of a knee injury. He says he's 100% right now. It looks like he's cleared to go in this game against Houston. I think there's some upside there if you can find a way to sneak him in, but you'd have to take. So Eric, one more pivot that I wanted to mention. I really personally like Daniel Jones. Obviously coming off a rough week, priced him pretty low because of it. I really like the Brian Daboll's willingness to use him in the running game, kind of letting him do that when necessary. It was obviously something they tried to do against the Cowboys unsuccessfully, but he did run the ball. A lot of upside with his legs, similar to Anthony Richardson, who we've already briefly mentioned. And going up against this Arizona defense, who else can we get in our lineup with some upside? Well, we've been talking about the Seattle-Detroit game. We talked about it when we talked about FanDuel with some of the receiver options that we were looking at. We got to get Kenneth Walker in for that very reason. The Seahawks didn't look great this last week. We've already talked about it, but Kenneth Walker is the horse. Not only for rushing the ball, but also in the passing game. Yeah, he only had 3 yards receiving, but he did get targeted 5 times and have 4 receptions, which here we are in DraftKings. We love those receptions as well. So he's healthy. We know he was supposed to be a little bit banged up coming out of the off season, but he's healthy. So let's get Kenneth Walker to the 3rd in our lineup. And that doesn't leave us much for tight end or defense, but I really like this Kincaid kid. If you watch the game, the Buffalo game, you saw that Dalton Kincaid got as many targets as his counterpart Knox. He was 4 for 4 on the receiving end. Not a lot of yards there, but he looked like to be kind of another go-to for Josh Allen, who likes to use his tight ends. A lot of athleticism with this Kincaid. They obviously went with him early in the draft. He was their first pick of this draft. Going up against the Las Vegas defense, who has historically been bad against tight ends, and no money left. So what are we going to do for defense? We're going to go all the way to one of the bottom folks, and We could have had the Rams or the Raiders. Rams going against the Niners. Raiders are going against Buffalo. No, thank you. So that leaves us Tennessee going up against perhaps an Ecklerless Chargers. And so if Eckler is out, I think this is even more appealing. But at $2,400, let's go with the Titans. Eric?
No, I like this lineup. I particularly like the Dalton Kincaid. I mean, you're getting, I think, a discount on the fact that the Josh Allen just had such a terrible game, right? You're not going to see that. So I think that the whole pie of the passing offense of Buffalo is going to be so much higher than you saw against the Jets, and I think he'll be the beneficiary.
Yeah, one thing to add, we have $100 left here. If somehow Travis Kelce's not able to play again this weekend, and you think that's going to be tough for Kansas City, you can pick this Jacksonville defense, who did score a lot of points in the fantasy points this last week. So that's just another alternative. Again, if Kelce's not playing, I think that's worth considering. If he is, I don't think they'll play him if he's still banged up.
Love to hear what you guys are thinking. What did you think about either DraftKings or FanDuel? Be sure to say in the comment section if you like a particular guy and on which slate. Until next week, take care, everybody. We'll put 2 videos on the screen we think you'll enjoy, including week 2 in NFL Survivor.